to the Commission on Ending Homelessness meeting for August. It's hard to believe it's August already. It seems like we just turned the calendar year, but here we are at the end of the summer, kids going back to school and everything. But welcome to those that are guests. I guess, Kathleen, do you want to introduce the guests for us?
Sure, I can do that. Derwin Montgomery is with us from the city's Affordable Housing Coalition to give us an update on the work that they're doing. And then we have the folks from City with Dwellings, Ruth Burkaw, Lee Tolberry, and Mark Dockery, who will be giving us a report on street outreach and the unsheltered population.
Great. Well, thanks to all of you for joining. Appreciate it. Well, I guess we've got the minutes that Kathleen had sent out to the group. I'll just ask if there's everyone's had a chance to look at those and if there's any feedback. If not, I'd entertain a motion to adopt those if there's no feedback.
This is Shane. So moved.
All right, I'll second that. Any opposition? Any opposed? Okay, hearing no opposition, we'll say those have been approved. So thank you for that.
And before you move on, can I just ask real quickly, who's on the phone so I can get your name for the minutes? It's phone number 782-8749. If you could unmute and let me know who it is. Person on the phone, can you unmute, please, and tell us who you are? Okay, I guess it's a ghost. Go ahead.
Okay. I guess this is all public record anyway, so nothing confidential, but maybe they'll get in a spot where they can unmute in a little bit. So I guess next up, we've got Derwin. Appreciate you joining. Looking forward to hearing more about what's happening on the Affordable Housing Coalition front. So maybe without further ado, I can just turn it over to you and let you give us your update.
All right. Appreciate it, Jim, and rest of the members. First, thank you all for making space and time for us to circle back around and connect. Tremendous amount of need in the area of affordable housing in the city and county as a whole. And just a few updates for you all, and then can pause for any questions folks may have in and around it. Just recently, the Affordable Housing Coalition made a recommendation to the council in reference to housing plan and a more specific housing action plan to be presented. That went before the council this past Monday. Final approval, and prior to that went to both the Finance Committee and the General Government and Housing Committee. A lot of good debate and conversation happened at both of the committee levels. And final approval happened on Monday, at which it passed the council the council approved the recommendation by the coalition to move forward with a citywide affordable housing action plan and housing plan. To be more specific, this plan and its intentions is to not to rehash other plans that have already been conducted in community, but to more so do community work and engagement around housing, get direct input from citizens and community groups, folks who have vested interests, folks like the Commission on Ending Homelessness and others, direct input, and then be able to create from that an actual strategy and action plan that the city will move forward with in terms of executing its plan on the creation of 750 additional housing units in the city as a whole. The reason that the coalition believed that having a real clear plan and strategy was necessary was some of the same reasons why when the Commission on Ending Homelessness started was as a 10-year plan to end homelessness, that it started from a plan and a strategy. And so we wrestled with the fact that there are both emergency and immediate needs today that have to be dealt with and solved, while we're also dealing with the long range plan of being able to create those 750 units to get us to that 15,000 number that we know we need to get to. And so for the public, and we shared it in the committee meetings, that this plan and its intentions are not going to solve the immediate needs that we're facing right now today. The backlogs, as well as some of the other challenges that we face. This plan is not intended to do so, but it is the path, the way forward for next year, year after, and the years to come in reference to that. In addition to that, is also intended to create a space and place where the work of creating, sustaining, developing affordable housing in the community is not one that is centrally located, vested, and only housed within city government. The city alone does not have the capacity to help a community move forward with it. And so we need to have a strategy that is inclusive of both public and private partners to be able to facilitate the ability to get there, as well as being able to resource existing community institutions and organizations that have a vested interest in housing, but don't have the capacity to help stimulate or create additional housing for us as a whole. So as a part of the strategy and the implementation plan, there's also a resourcing part of this where the group Housing NOLA comes from New Orleans, group that helped stand up and engage directly with housing work after Katrina. They now begin to do work in other cities and community, including Nashville, Tennessee, and a few other cities across the country that they're working in. The same group that the council approved us to move forward working in. Exciting time for us, an actual place where we can see some tangible things moving forward. And one of the things that I'm excited about not only is the plan and the strategy that will be put in place, but that real big piece around resourcing and supporting existing local organizations. But there's also been conversation that there may be a need for the establishment of some standalone entity itself to help drive this work, hold city accountable, county accountable, and others. And some of that will be sifted through whether or not or where this work should be housed long term and how it should be facilitated is also one of the goals from the plan as a whole. And so there's a bunch of groups out there who are talking about housing, engaged about housing. Hope is that as a part of this work, we put all those folks at the same table working towards same goals for us as a whole. I'll pause on that part to see if there were any questions on the housing plan, its intention, and then just two other comments around some of the work of the coalition.
So Derwin, this is Jim. Appreciate you joining again. It sounds like still fairly early in the process. It's at this point, I'd say it's a plan for a plan. Is that a fair statement?
A plan for a plan that's funded.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we're pulling together all the right parties. We're expecting that we will be able to do that to try to then create this longer term and shorter term plan. That's to your point, for short term needs and long term needs, and probably have steps, right, to get to that longer term in the plan. Is that a fair statement? Correct.
And just for the sake of just where I'll read just two lines from the scope of work on this, just to help folks. The scope of work includes reviewing existing finance and policy strategies, interviews with stakeholders, focus groups with community members from across the city, and neighborhood summit, producing a housing plan document to include strategies for implementation, timelines, and phasing suggestions, a launch event and capacity building for civic leaders and community development corporations. And the staff, just a statement on this, the staff will prepare the 2024-2028 consolidated housing and community development plan during year 2023 for submission to HUD in May of 2023. And that's important because they'll be using some of the information coming out of this to support the consolidated plan, which talks about all housing funding. And that is also, some of that consolidated plan information also does touch some of the resources that goes towards the continuum of care as well.
So really, it sounds like the next year is kind of the when you hope to get the plan sort of in concrete detail that you can submit for funding approval.
Yeah, the consolidated plan part of it, yes.
Okay. All right, good. And you haven't brought a third party in. It doesn't sound like just yet, but you're considering, is there a third party to come in and help drive the project?
So Housing NOLA is the third party that was approved as a part of this. They are the group that will be coming in to help facilitate the work. It's Housing NOLA.
Okay. Appreciate that.
And as a part of that, they will be engaging local individuals to help in that work. That was one of the important pieces that was part of the conversation. Great for the outside insight, but then some of the community work to touch folks, you do need to connect with people who are in the community on the ground to help make sure folks are engaged.
Mm-hmm. Are some of the stakeholders, do the stakeholders include some of the bigger corporations in the area?
That has been part of the conversation for them. And that was actually the second part that I wanted to share about our work, that there's standing work from the Affordable Housing Coalition. And then there's this kind of direct project-based work. Some of that standing work from the coalition involves creating some stakeholder tables, and that will engage on a consistent basis some of our large employers in the community, along with the direct conversation associated with some of our CDCs and nonprofit organizations to get those folks in conversation and talking. We've discussed launching those roundtables as a part of the work that is coming from the housing plan. So kicking off some of those roundtables as being able to help feed information, but those would be roundtables that would continue to exist beyond the planning process, because those voices will be important moving forward in the full conversation. And we have a short list of folks, both groups and organizations that we want to have invited. And part of that is getting some of the elected leaders who put the Affordable Housing Coalition together to be a part of helping to invite those folks to the table initially, so we can share what we would like for them, their input, and how involved we'd like for them to be.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for let me pepper you with questions there.
Yeah.
Just real curious about this topic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other question at this point for Derwin? I know you may have more, Derwin, you were planning to cover, but any other question at this point from the group? Okay.
And then the very last thing I'll share is just around as we move forward in this work. As I mentioned, this is the kind of project-based planning work that's coming out of this. But on an ongoing basis, we are navigating through and trying to figure out what it looks like for the Affordable Housing Coalition to live into one of the specified areas of its charter from the council, which is to advise the council directly on how the council expends housing resources and dollars. That's one of the outline specific within the council resolution creating the Affordable Housing Coalition. And that has not been sifted out totally as we're finding footing in that space. But we are imagining a space where it could potentially be something in the sense of projects that come forward that request city funding and resources would have some type of review process that comes before the Affordable Housing Coalition, in which we make a recommendation for in support of it, the resources or not, based upon them living up to certain affordability terms with that. That then goes to the council as they're reviewing that as well, somewhat like a planning board stamp of approval on something. The desire in that is to help remove some of the political challenges that happen when folks at the council are simply debating funding projects, locations, and that kind of thing, some of the NIMBY issues. And so to see that come along with approval or not receiving an approval from the Affordable Housing Coalition would help give some cover and some direction to the council as they're navigating and reviewing those kind of requests for support as they look at investing in housing moving forward. And that's all I have.
Well, Derwin, I really do appreciate the update, appreciate the work that's going on. Obviously, big need, not just here, but across the country for this, for affordable housing. But appreciate what you're doing here locally to try to help move this forward. So look forward to hearing more. I think we talked about maybe having you back periodically just to get some periodic updates. I mean, obviously, key to us being able to help solve the homelessness issues that we have is very dependent on affordable housing being available. So that's why we're so interested, obviously. But thank you for coming.
Yep. Again, thank you for having me. And as well, again, just the sense that the statement I mentioned earlier, that some of the plan and some of the work that Affordable Housing Coalition is working on is not some of the immediate things that are changing what's happening right now on the ground. And so still need to make sure that, the work that you all are doing is vitally important to directly engaging folks where they are and helping to navigate some of the existing challenges that we see that folks are facing. And part of what the city and particularly a couple council members want to make sure it was clear what the city was doing around the immediate needs. And so they're going to be making sure that they're socializing and headlining some of that more so that folks can understand and know what's available, what they're doing to help try to deal on the immediate side of things. But again, thank you all. And, as always, if there's interim questions anyone has for me, feel free to send it over and we'll try our best to respond or get the staff to get back to you on it.
Very good. Thank you, Derwin. All right, well, pivoting to the next topic, Sharika, it looks like you're up for a couple here. The first one, or the next one here, is on unsheltered NOFA. So I'll turn it over to Sharika Floyd.
Thank you. So the unsheltered NOFA, with the unsheltered NOFA, we're looking to do a special meeting on September 20th, the afternoon. With the way that the special NOFA has been laid out, we do need a special meeting in order to approve the applications once they come in. So the first order of business for the special NOFA is the request for a special meeting on September 20th, that afternoon. It should take no more than 15 to 30 minutes. It's just meeting to review the applications that's been submitted, let you guys know the priority and the ratings for those applications, and the rating panels, their recommendation for who should be funded, and get your approval for that. So that is the first request.
So you're saying September 20. I think we've got here on the agenda 8/31, but it's September 20.
That is for the annual NOFA.
Okay. So there's two special meetings.
There's two NOFAs. So right now we're on the unsheltered NOFA.
So
unsheltered NOFA is for unsheltered homelessness. So HUD released a special NOFA on June 22nd. With that special NOFA, we are able to apply for approximately $2.6 million to provide services and create programs for our unsheltered homeless population. So we are working first on a community plan. We've been working about 3 or 4 weeks on that community plan with various stakeholders. Once that community plan is done, which I'm hoping to have done by the end of this week, next week, an RFP will be released, and that RFP will only run for about 2 weeks. Once those applications are submitted, they'll be given to the rating panel. This is separate from the annual NOFA, which they've already scored. They would score those applications, and we would need those applications to be approved by you before September 22nd to be given to HUD by that September 22nd posting deadline. So that is the first unsheltered NOFA process that we're working on. The August 31st date is our annual NOFA. So this is the NOFA that we apply for each year. That one, we're doing a special, the annual NOFA is usually you're giving 90 days. This year they have cut 30 days. So now we're only giving 60 days to apply. So we have to have that turned around within the 60-day period. And we have a special meeting for that for August 31st to approve the applications that are just recently scored by the rating panel.
Okay, so really it's two special meetings, one September 20th, and then the next, but before that we've got one on August 31. So yes. You're asking the group to just look at calendars and see if there's a time that works best for everyone.
Yes, on the afternoon of September 20th.
So we also have a regular scheduled meeting on September 15th. What if we just moved the regular meeting from the 15th to the 20th, so we didn't have 2 meetings 4 days apart?
Works for me.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm moving to the calendar. September 20th.
Yep.
The afternoon.
Okay. That should work. I mean, it works for me and Andrea and Jim. Does it work for anybody else?
Yeah, that works for me.
Melissa, does that work for you?
Sorry, I'm gonna be on vacation that week, actually.
You don't want to stay for this? Shane, Ron, does that work for y'all?
Yeah, I should be good. This is Shane.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and shift the invite then to the 20th from 2:30 to 4.
Thank you, Kathleen. And just to provide an update on the special NOFA, we've met with the local providers and various other stakeholders, and we've come up with 4 main categories that we're looking to focus on. One is the increase of street outreach, also making our system more accessible. And the third would be housing services. So we're looking at different ways to engage with landlords, also how to provide better retention services, as well as creative ways to utilize housing that we currently have available. And then the fourth thing is supportive services, creating more engagement across various services that's available within the community, and looking at other creative ways to engage additional stakeholders for those that we serve. So those are the 4 main categories that we have identified as creating a priority for the special NOFA.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
So do y'all want to, now while we're talking about this, select a time for 8:31? Is it possible to do it via email, or do we need to truly meet?
Good
I have a question. So the meeting for September 20th, right? That's a Tuesday. October, okay, just making sure. So we're having 2 meetings on the 20th because we have COC in the morning. Okay, just making sure.
So for the 8:31 one, I don't know, does that need to be in person, or can it be handled via email or vote?
I think we should, because we're presenting the project, we should meet in person.
Okay. So what time would y'all like to do it on 31st?
Can we keep the regular 2:30 time?
It's fine with me.
Yeah. I mean, that works if it, okay. So 8:31. And you're only going to need what, about a half hour, you think, Sharika?
Yes, no more than that.
Okay. I will get that sent out.
Thank you.
All right. Very good. Thank you. All right. So our next topic is around unsheltered street count data. And I'm not sure who was going to take the lead on that. I think Laura, maybe you and some others here, but I'll turn it to you, Laura.
Do you need the screen? Didn't y'all have a presentation? Who's going to share? Who needs to share?
Laura, if you can give me the ability to share, and then I'll just control the slides for City with Dwellings portion of the slideshow.
I've made you the host. I think that lets you share.
Okay.
You can just share just without being a host, but let's try that.
All right. Can you all see?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So thank you for having me again. I was asked to present some data on relevant topics, and right now, since there's such a huge focus on the unsheltered NOFO, and also fall and winter are right around the corner, so it's time to start to discuss our plans for the fall and winter. I put together a short presentation on just some data, updating everybody on the unsheltered homeless population in our COC. So this information is actually gathered by the street outreach staff in a way that's different from most of the homeless information that we usually report on. This information is not coming out of the HMIS system. It's actually a special list that's being maintained by street outreach staff in what used to be multiple organizations. And now I believe it's one organization, or soon to be. Back in 2020, the street outreach staff in various organizations started to maintain this list together. And it contains some information on the known unsheltered people in our community. So I emphasize known because we always want to make sure to remember that there are people who are potentially uncounted who we're not aware of yet. And so this information that we'll be presenting is accurate as of August 15th. So the current count of unsheltered people in our community that are known to us is 233. How does that compare to the sheltered population? So right now, this is the number of people who are currently being sheltered in the homeless shelters in our community. So about 72 people in the Bethesda Center, about 35 people in Samaritan, about 46 people in Salvation Army, and about 15 people in ESR's small Burton Street shelter. I say about because, like I said, this is data as of the 15th, and I'm sure things have changed since then. As you can tell, the unsheltered population is more than over twice the size of the sheltered population currently. How does the demographics break down? So overwhelmingly, the unsheltered population is male, with 153 people being reporting being male, and 73 people reporting being female. The age breakdown, we don't have an accurate age on everybody. 117 people have not yet shared their age with the street outreach team, but this is how the age breakdown looks right now. Most people are middle age, between the age of 30 and 59, with a small but growing portion of people being older than 60. The racial breakdown is actually kind of a contrast from what we see in the sheltered population. The majority of folks who are unsheltered right now are white, while the majority of the folks who are in the sheltered population are Black. I can't say that they're, I can't comment on why that is or what that means, really. That's something that maybe collectively we can sort of investigate, but that is currently what the situation looks like. Where are people staying? So one of the things that is tracked by the street outreach folks is where they are finding people and how they usually connect to people. So common places that people are staying are in their vehicle, in a local park, in an abandoned building, in their preferred encampment, or in their specific neighborhood. So these are just general places where we have, the street outreach folks have either made contact or meet people regularly. Over 50% of the unsheltered population currently is struggling with a mental illness. And almost 30% have a confirmed substance use disorder. I emphasize confirmed because there might be people who are maybe thought to have a substance use disorder, but the staff are just not sure. And now for the last portion of the slide deck, I believe Ruth from City with Dwellings is going to take over from here on out. Ruth, just let me know when you want me to switch over to the next slide.
I will do that. Thank you. I am Ruth Burkaw. I'm the Executive Director of City with Dwellings. And this is Lee beside me here, our Director of Diversion and Outreach. And Mark Dockery is also with us. He is our Specialist for Outreach and transportation. So we're going to share with you primarily a couple slides around challenges related to both the unsheltered population, some of their unique challenges, and then also some of the challenges of the system or the agencies that are the primary service providers, just so that you have an awareness of that. So let's go on to the next slide, Laura. When we talk about challenges of unsheltered homelessness, we look at several different pieces. And so the first column you see on the left is really all about shelter space. And I'll give you a little caveat already. I mean, it says no available shelter space for those with severe mental issues or substance use disorders. Of course, there are shelters available, but they're not necessarily available to our folks, meaning that they have outstayed their welcome there. They're either unable or unwilling to stay in the existing shelters. But there really is not a shelter space that is what I would say equipped especially for folks with severe persistent mental illness and or substance use disorder. So there are other kinds of shelter space that would be really helpful to have, for example, respite and palliative and hospice care for folks with physical disabilities, for folks who need caregiving, for people who've had pets. Things like that. Those are things we note a lot when we're trying to find shelter, help folks find shelter. And then there's a variety of other sort of what I would call miscellaneous barriers that our unsheltered folks run into. Oftentimes they won't come and stay at our emergency overflow shelter in the winter because there's no place for them to store their stuff. If they've been living in a tent encampment, some of them have amassed quite a lot of possessions and belongings that they are unwilling to move away from in order to come in and find shelter. And there's really no good solution right now. We do some bins, but we're pretty limited as what we can do. So storage options are an issue. We do provide some daytime hours for our folks to come in and navigate a little bit of the system, and we help them do that. But we are somewhat limited currently in terms of can do from a daytime standpoint for both forming healthy community and being with folks, but also for just getting out of the weather, especially in the heat or in the ice, things like that. Of course, you know, employment, income, some of those things, and obviously there's just not enough affordable housing. But I wanted to just sort of focus on the health and safety piece. For our folks who are unsheltered homeless particularly, trauma is almost universal among this population. And that means that they have experienced potentially adverse childhood experiences. And I don't know how familiar you are with it's called the ACEs study, but in the late 90s, Kaiser Permanente did a study of over 80,000 people and screened them for on a 10-point scale for childhood experiences such as physical and sexual abuse, physical and emotional neglect, family dysfunctions like substance use, mental health concerns, incarceration, divorce. And the higher the score, of course, the higher the potential impact on a person's health and well-being. So we find that the folks who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness, in fact, have extremely high ACEs scores as a general rule. And of course, homelessness is in of itself traumatic. So trauma is a daily part of their lives, meaning they really are living in sort of that state of fight or flight almost all the time. Some of the research I have recently seen says, of course, which makes sense, the more ACEs a person has, the higher their level of trauma throughout their life, the greater the likelihood that someone will become homeless as an adult. So, you know, 85% of those who have been in touch with criminal justice system, the substance misuse and homelessness services systems have experienced trauma as children. So it's quite a correlation there. And beyond that, of course, since trauma does and can have lasting physical and mental effects on an individual, many of our folks have what we would call trimorbidity. So it's not just mental health, not just substance abuse, but it's also some sort of physical diabetes, problems with their kidneys, all kinds of different physical disorders that come as a result of their lifestyle and their trauma and where they've been in their lives. So that is a really important piece that I think we as a, and I think in that the COC is working to address becoming a more trauma-informed system, and that is certainly needed when it comes to the unsheltered population. I'm going to move to the next slide, Laura, which is sort of the challenges. This was the challenges of those folks experiencing homelessness. The next slide is really sort of about the challenges for those of us who are providing services. I listed some of the primary service providers that we have a lot of overlap in terms of seeing unsheltered folks. But really what we're talking about here as it relates to some of these challenges is, we're seeing a lot more folks. Our numbers have gone up. There is not enough staff to meet people where they are. We're working on that, and the Unsheltered NOFO will help with that, we believe, but there certainly is not enough staff or coverage. We would like to be able to expand the time that we're available to be out meeting folks and building relationships and inviting them into the Community First Center for some assistance, but we need more people, and we need more money in order to do that. Transportation is a challenge, of course, from a sort of a system perspective, getting folks where they need to be because their transportation options are so limited. Of course, housing again, and then data collection is a challenge. Man in a red hat does not cut it for HMIS data purposes, but sometimes man in a red hat is not willing to tell us his name or give us much information for quite some time, if at all. As it comes to the sort of the individuals and organizations and that effect on the system, non-compliance is a problem. Certainly, a person might know that they need to go see someone about their diabetes, but they're not willing to go, or they're too afraid maybe to approach that system, or just don't believe they need help. Mostly, this is all still about trauma, and non-compliance is really about mental health, substance use, and lack of safety and trust. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about non-compliance. But it has a very practical effect on the system, because when folks don't meet their appointments, or they're unable to, get admitted to where they need to be admitted or get themselves there, then they don't get help that day. So it's important. Another really challenging piece, I think, for the system these days, especially as it relates to those of us who serve people who are unsheltered, is just secondary trauma and a little burnout, a little toxic stress, especially on the heels of the pandemic. We are working with the wounded population, and that gets to be a lot for folks. And so figuring out some ways to be more mindful of our folks, and figuring out some creative ways that we can provide a little respite for them as well. So that's me hitting the highlights. There may be a bullet or two that stood out to you, and I'm happy to, Mark and Lee and I, happy to provide clarity on any of those. But that's just a quick and dirty overview of kind of where we are with unsheltered homelessness at this point in time. Thank you.
Appreciate the information. I don't think there's a lot of new in that, but it's helpful to see it kind of in one place there. It was well done summary. I guess some of the challenges as a service provider, are those things that you're constantly working to try to get over, or do you think those are just innate and there's just not a lot that can be done to change some of those challenges? Can't make someone show up for an appointment, right? But are there other things that
I think
you guys are working towards?
Yeah, what we are seeing is that we are not having the same behavioral issues in our Community First Center as the bus stop and the library and the coffee shop and the lobby of possibly Daymark. And we really feel like we're low barrier enough, and that doesn't mean we're no barrier, but we are low barrier enough that we will take you the way you are today. And if today it will be your day. And if we need to meet you in the parking lot because of the disruption, or just try tomorrow, slowly but surely, that is getting a level of trust that people are telling us that they are not able to have in other places, because we're always welcoming you back. And we definitely understand the challenges of disruption from mental health issues or substance use disorder. But we just don't seem to have, we don't have the same issues in the overflow shelter. We don't have the same issues in our Community First Center. And we talk about that a lot, in that if you can trust me and I trust this resource, and I will go with you and help to get you in the door, that's huge because this person keeps going to that resource and keep knocked out back in the parking lot because of behavior. Yes, but we find that there are times when people that have been banned from places actually can pull it together, and that should be celebrated, and we do that here. So we think that's a big part of it. There's so much coming into the system that there's 100 people behind you that are acting right, as my grandmother would say. And so if we could walk along beside this person to literally get you through the lobby, past the reception desk, back to the doctor, that's a win. That's a real big win.
Right.
At the last homeless caucus meeting, it was reported, excuse me, that Bethesda was not allowing daytime showers. Is that still going on? Was that a COVID related thing? Was that repairs to the pipes or whatever their problem they were having a while ago? I don't know. So I don't know if that's actually happening, or does anyone know if that's changed? I know she had a bullet point yesterday. I'm sorry, what?
No, I checked yesterday, and the people that are staying there have been allowed back in the day center, and that's mostly COVID related, I think. I didn't know it was a pipe issue, or maybe there isn't, but that no one else is able at this time to go in for showers or laundry if none of the street population. But that's moving towards a positive direction. I think that the people that are staying there have some daytime, because we've seen our numbers really skyrocket while they've been dealing with this COVID outbreak.
That's correctly. Due to the COVID outbreak, they had to stop some services to be able to house their positive COVID clients.
Yeah. And I don't think there's a date on that, but I think they're trying. It just, it's just a moving target.
And it moves fast.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to hit. What are the questions from the group? Again, good information, but what are the questions? Okay.
I didn't see in the numbers, but I know that I've been hearing mostly through phone calls that there are some families with young kids out on the street. Have you guys seen that? What are you seeing in terms of numbers of families?
I just find it more and more. Families haven't always come to us, but now more and more families come to us. I'm sure we could pull together a percentage. There's so little we can do for a family and for Forsyth County because Salvation Army's full. There's the EHV vouchers. I just heard that there are 80 of them distributed, but only 11 were able to be used. And so it's just tough for families. I get calls. Our outreach team gets calls every single week. Can you come meet this family? They're living in their car. Can you meet this family? They're living behind the food line. And it's just, we're meeting new families all the time and don't really have anything to offer them at all. If you have children, when Bethesda opens back up, they were at 72, and I'm assuming they still take their full 100. So that might be some beds open up, but not for someone with a child. So what we're doing is trying to connect people with other Salvation Armies and other communities which are full, and providing transportation. We usually can, I don't know, we don't have money for that, but if we could find a place for you, we will get you there. If you can leave. I think the perception is that families, and I think it's true, some true data behind it, that families have more support than single people do. They've got a bigger network and all of that kind of thing. And I think that's really saved our families. But with the evictions and the housing market, we're seeing more and more. And like single people, we've got places to send you that we could try this, we could try this, we could try this, but for families, just not.
Yeah. Do you have, in terms of resourcing responses to families, do you have a sense of the size of the population you're seeing?
Whew. I'm just gonna, no, because I would have to take a guess.
Okay.
Part of it is we don't record them because it's just so dang hopeless that we're not putting, we're just not.
Okay. So just a little
It's
challenge.
recorded somewhere, but
If you record them and report them, then we can get a better sense of the size and the trends to be able to talk about shifting resources.
yeah, and the school system can tell us how many, homeless children, that at any given time, they usually can tell us how many, but these are on top. These are new homeless families.
Right. And they're not necessarily, the school system is looking at a different set of variables
Oh, okay.
than we are. So they can tell us how many meet the McKinney-Vento definition, which is broader than our definition. They don't always know who's literally in a car and who's in a hotel.
Yeah.
Or who's got kids in one place and parents in another place.
Yeah, and when we talk about families that we're talking about literally homeless. So this is abandoned building, a car, a van in the park.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other question, thoughts on that topic before we change to the next? All right, well, thanks again, Laura. All right, well, Andrea, I guess we got one other topic is tentative around isolation shelter, so I'll let you run with that.
Sure. So it's tentative because it's very short and I wasn't sure I was going to have much of an update for you. At this point, the COC's plan for isolation when we have COVID folks is to some shelters have resources to put individuals in hotels on their own. We're still doing some research as to whether or not we have any obligations or actually whether or not it's prohibited from telling hotels why we're isolating, why we're renting a room for someone. And then we are still looking for really space resources if we need to have a larger isolation than a handful of people in hotels. So that's why it was tentative, is we're still looking for space where we could isolate if we need to have upwards of 15 people in isolation.
Okay. I know there's ongoing conversation with the city and okay. So more to come, hopefully.
More to come, maybe. We are not, I was at the National Alliance conference at the end of July. We are not the only community in the same boat. A lot of communities, some communities have over the last couple of years built shelters specifically for people who are ill. Not the vast majority of communities. Some communities were able to acquire hotel motels where they can do both non-congregate shelter, meaning they don't have to worry about isolations because it's non-congregate, and some housing. Again, not a huge number of communities. So most communities are where we are, which is they have mass shelters with not a lot of good options for isolating if they have to isolate more than a handful of folks. So.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for that update. Look forward to hearing more. I know we've got that topic in another meeting this afternoon. We'll plan to have. So anything else, Andrea, or anyone else for today's meeting, for this meeting?
I don't have anything else today.
All right. Well, appreciate everyone joining, all the information. We're making progress. It doesn't feel like that at times, right? When we see big numbers like 233 unsheltered, but I know there's a lot of hard work going on. That number would be a lot higher if we didn't see that work happening. So I appreciate what everybody's doing. And with that, I will let everyone have the rest of their afternoon back. I do have one question, Andrea. I know we have a meeting later. Do we use this same?
I think it's the same link. Yep.
Okay. All right, great.
See
All
you
right, guys.
See you.
Hope everyone has a good rest of the day.
Everyone else next month.
Bye-bye.